So with that, we'll ask if there are any other questions that anyone would like to offer up that you might have. We'll take them via the question box here. Um, and don't see anything right now on Twitter. So perhaps you guys have exhausted the questions that you have. Hold on here for one more second. And yeah, it doesn't look like there are any more. So with that, I'd like to thank Mike. Oops. Okay, John's asking, how do you spell the name of that unique trust that you mentioned earlier?
Oh God, I knew you were going to ask that. Virendil, I have no idea. It starts with a V. Let's see if we can do a quick. Google saves the day once again. Yeah.
It's a V-I-E-R-E-N-D-E-L, trust.
Yeah, and like I said, it's sort of a goofy one. It's the reason that I mention it at all is because, they always are looking for things that are kind of snappy that they can ask a question about. And Virendil trust, it's just like it has a name, right? It's this very specific concept. You should probably know the component parts of trusses, like a king post and all of those things, but maybe know a few of the key ones, like a how versus a king truss, scissor truss, some of those kinds of things. But you're not really expected to know like all the different names of all the different truss types. But just Virendil is one of those weird ones that it's just likely to come up. I remember I think this is beyond the statute of limitations on these things, so I think I could say it. When I took the exam, however many gazillion years ago it was, I actually had a question about Virendil trusses, and many people have mentioned it to me. So that's the only reason I mention it. So they won't put another V named truss in the state. They won't try to trick you. It's just whether you would recognize it or not.
So with that, we'll go ahead and close up today's session. Actually, we did get one more question, so I'll take it.
One slid in, okay.
Yeah, right at the last second here. Structural systems is a discrete topic, straightforward to study for. I hear CDS is similar, not so broad. Others are very wide-ranging. Maybe it's better to take these early on before others. Is Ben's question?
So that's a good question. There really is no right answer to any of this. I think it's important that you come up with a strategy. And I've talked a little bit about a couple strategies, and I'll mention a couple more. What your suggestion makes sense to me. But just come up with a strategy so that you kind of know what's coming. You don't want to be sitting there going, oh, what am I going to take next? You just want to have an idea. And so then lay out your strategy and just do it. By far, the best way you can study for the exam is by taking the exams. And yes, I know you can you can take an exam before you're really ready and not pass. But you'll be ready to take it the next time, and it'll be much better. You'll be much better at it. So I wouldn't get overly fretting about it. Previously, what I would always say is that the best ones to do first, that the absolute first one is you do the one that you are most worried about. Excuse me, the absolute first one, you do the one that you most think you're going to be good at. And that way you kind of go in, you start one off, you get one under your belt that you feel comfortable in, you learn like where you park, and you learn where you put your coat, and it's on one that you're not super worked up over. So you start with that one, and then the second one you do is the one that you're most worried about, which for most people is structures. And then you get that one out of the way, now that you've sort of gone through one, you have an idea of how it's going to work. And the advantage of that is that you have to wait a period of time before you can retake the exam. And that way, that period of time can go by while you're taking other exams. Now, recently they've changed it. It used to be you had to wait at least 6 months. It's now down to, I think it's either 2 months or 60 days or something like that. So it's a much shorter period of time. So that doesn't really matter as much. But it's still not a bad way to approach it, where you say, okay, I'm going to start with the easy one, and then I'm going to dive in on the hard ones, just to kind of get the full range and so you feel comfortable. Having said that, one of the things I remember, it's kind of funny to say now, I actually teach systems, but when I was taking the exam, I didn't know anything about systems. And I went into that exam, I was totally unprepared, and I thought, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. I hadn't had a chance really to study for it. It's like, oh, this is going to be terrible. And I passed it, and then I later, got kind of interested and started studying up on it and got pretty good at it. But like I passed it before I knew really anything about it. Like you'll be surprised, even ones you think are hard, you may do just fine on. And occasionally what'll happen is you'll get an exam of something that you are totally killer knowledgeable on, and you'll get a bunch of random questions that you just don't happen to know, and you won't pass it. So don't overly fret about it. Come up with a strategy that works and then kind of move with it. I do like the one that you suggested though. That does actually make some sense. Those kind of more standalone-y ones, kind of get those out of the way and then group the other ones. That kind of dovetails with what I was saying earlier.
So we have a couple other ones here. Michael and Ed are both asking about the construction documents exam. Michael is asking, or really sort of for confirmation that you should focus on studying the A101, B101, and B201. And then Ed is wondering.
A201, yeah.
Ed is wondering if there's a specific exam that makes sense to combine with CD&S.
Yeah, I mean, if I was going to do CD&S together with some other ones, I would do it with site planning and design and programming, planning, and practice. And part of the reason for that is due to the transition to 5.0. There's just a logic to it. But it is kind of standalone. There are parts of CD&S that can show up on any of the exams, and any of the exams can show up on CD&S because the construction documents and services talks about the legal structure around stuff. So that can be implicated in material questions. It can be implicated in design questions. It can be implicated in all kinds of different ways. The CD&S will also talk about like how you structure an office or how you structure a set of documents. So if I'm talking about how I structure a set of documents, well, clearly that's going to be similar in conversation to building design and construction systems. So there are similarities through a lot of these different ones. But just to kind of get back to the initial question that you asked, which ones, what would I focus on? I would absolutely focus on the A101 owner contractor contract, the B101 owner architect contract, and then the A201 general conditions. Those are the three documents that are like by far the most meaningful, that most questions will come from. And you should have sort of a general gist of an idea about what the other contracts are. You don't have to like memorize any of them or anything like that, but you should have a gist of how those things work. So CMs are for construction managers, Cs are for consultants, Gs are like payouts and things like that. You should sort of have an idea of where those other ones are. But the ones that I would actually read through and really try to get to know are the A101, the B101, and the A201. Now, one of the things you will find, I'll just say very quickly, is that if you start at the beginning and start reading, you will be asleep by page 2, and you will have read through the whole thing and not taken anything in. Find a way to read it, like ask yourself some questions and then find the answers in the contract. Or there's a couple of great things on the AIA website. There's a commentary which takes it and breaks down only a few of them for some reason, but it will break down the contract into individual lines, and then there's a commentary with each line. So like this says this, but what it means is this, and like find those ways where you're not just like absorbing the words but not the understanding. You've got to find a way to actually read it for real. It's much harder to do than it sounds. But once you do that, they actually make interesting sense, and you will understand your role in all of this world much, much better the better you understand those contracts. I can't tell you how great it is to understand what those contracts say, because it affects like how long you spend on things, what you say to who, who answers a question in the client meeting, all of those things actually get answered in those contracts, and they're really useful.
Ben is asking if you agree that it's good to group the structural systems exam with the building design and construction.
There is a lot of overlap. I think that's not a bad choice. But like I say, whatever strategy you come up with, there's going to be pluses and minuses to any of them. But there's a logic to that. I would agree.
Okay, so we'll end our session there. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Mike, so much.
And thanks for the great questions. Those are really good questions.
Yeah, they really were. This worked out great. And so for those of you who are still tuned in, don't forget to register for our next webinar and send us a note, hello@blackspectacles.com, if you have any suggestions for what you'd like for us to cover in terms of a topic. And don't forget the coupon code that you can use. And thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time. Today's A.R.E. Live episode is an extension of our online A.R.E. curriculum that you can find on blackspectacles.com, the home of online learning for architecture and design. If you need to prepare for the A.R.E., which I assume many of you guys do, and if you're looking for a good way to study for the exam that's more flexible and easier to digest than the traditional exam prep materials, and head over to blackspectacles.com to try out any of our free A.R.E. video tutorials that are taught by tonight's presenter, Mike Newman, and that are built in collaboration with AIA Chicago. As an attendee, and as you can see here on the screen here, we have a couple of notes or information for today's episode. Anyone who is attending today's session, you're eligible to use this coupon code worth 15% off the first charge on your individual membership. If you're one of those folks who would like for your firm to purchase Black Spectacles Access for you and your colleagues, just visit blackspectacles.com/business, which is this fourth link here, and we'll send all the information for your firm to get set up. And also from now until the 15th of next month, firm memberships are 15% off if you mention this episode when you submit your form through blackspectacles.com/business. Also on this, you'll see that our next webinar will be on May 27th with Mike at 6 o'clock. So if you'd like to register for it, here's the registration link. We're still firming up the details and the actual topic. So if you have any suggestions and would like Mike to cover a specific topic or would like us to interview someone in particular about a specific topic, please let us know.